Mayor Marty Walsh was in Washington today for perhaps the biggest moment in his career to date, his confirmation hearing for his nomination as U.S. Labor Secretary.
Throughout my career, I've led by listening, collaborating, and building partnerships. That's how, if confirmed, I will lead the Department of Labor.
But on the eve of his big D.C. interview, Walsh was dealing with a scandal back home, suspending the man he had tapped and sworn in as the new Boston police commissioner just 2 days prior, and launching an investigation into a 1999 domestic abuse claim. According to the Boston Globe, Walsh took action after a reporter shared details of the restraining order Commissioner Dennis White's then-wife took out against her husband. At the time, she accused him of pushing her and hitting her, and a friend told police that after a confrontation with his wife and another acquaintance, White said he, quote, wanted to shoot her and him. White denied the claims in court filings, and the Globe couldn't find evidence he was ever charged. But of course, now there are questions about what kind of vetting was done before his appointment and how the case was handled more than 20 years ago. I'm joined by Andrew Ryan, a Globe investigative reporter who's been covering White's story and writing a multi-part series focused on police accountability, and Jamarhl Crawford, community activist, editor of Blackstonian, and a member, along with the commissioner, of the Mayor's Police Reform Task Force. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Andrew, let me start with you. This disturbing aspect of Dennis White's past, how widely known were these details inside the Boston Police Department?
You know, it's a big department, and I don't know exactly how widely known it was. I mean, what I do know is that, at the Globe, that we have kind of amassed public records to background people and to, double check things. Through some of the hard work of some of my colleagues like Todd Wallach and Matt Rocheleau. And, we were certainly surprised by this announcement last Thursday when suddenly Commissioner Gross was retiring and a brand new commissioner that we didn't know much about was going to be sworn in a couple of days. So what we did was, we checked through all our records, and then we immediately, with what we found, we immediately went to BPD and said, Thursday afternoon saying, we'd like details of all of the good things he's done, all of the awards, the accommodations, but we also want to know about his internal affairs history, including these 3 cases. And, we laid them out and requested them back then.
Thank you for going into that level of detail. I know sometimes there's reason to be discreet about how you got information. I'd found myself wondering if this might have been a dime drop by someone who didn't like the fact that White had been promoted. But just to be clear, you guys had this information in hand when this surprise announcement was made, right?
Yes and no. We had bare bones. Okay. So what we had was enough that one of the internal affairs cases raised a red flag for us just because of some of the work we did last year. The specific allegation made us want to dig a little deeper. And so we just started combing through court records.
Got it.
And so last Monday at the beginning of that nor'easter, I went to probate and family court and pulled some records. We had been in another court the Friday before. So we had to go and, do our research and dig through things just to try to figure out exactly, what this might stem from.
Understood. Thank you. Jamarhl, as I mentioned, you served on the Police Reform Task Force with the commissioner. I was struck when he was sworn in by Mayor Walsh at how different his tone seemed to be compared to the tone that his predecessor, William Gross, was striking on the way out. In an interview with the Globe, the commissioner seemed to bristle at the idea of civilian oversight of the police, saying, I don't like Monday morning quarterbacking from people who haven't walked in anyone's shoes. Commissioner White, after he was sworn in, came out and praised you and other task force members for the work that you had all done together, and seemed to my ear anyway to welcome the idea of civilian oversight and advice. Am I right to read his attitude on police reform that way?
That's been in my experience, and I think it's different than the tone and attitude of each of the other predecessors who, spent the majority of their energy and resources at trying to dismiss it, run away from it, say it doesn't exist, paint some people in cases, myself included, as almost crazy for suggesting these things happen. Previous commissioner, I think, just a couple of months ago, while, race and all these things were bubbling up on BPD, just said, I don't see racism on the BPD. I see blue. So, yes, I definitely think that there was a definite different tone. And dare I say that could be some of the reasoning why this level of scrutiny could be placed on him and in my experience, not on others.
Let me ask you to elaborate on that a bit, because from what Andrew said, the Globe had some information raising questions about Dennis White when he was appointed, and then fleshed out that information. They followed a trail that they'd already established and came up with the story or the questions that led to White exiting. When you talk about him having an extra level of scrutiny, what are you talking about specifically?
Well, specifically, what, did he just get on the force a couple of years ago? No. So he's been on the force for, 27 years? Was that?
I have 3 decades in my head. So, ballpark 3 decades.
Okay. So, and he's been number 3 in command, at least under the tenure of former Commissioner William Gross, correct?
Right. He was his commissioner, chief of staff, or pardon me, superintendent, chief of staff.
So in my experience, and in my experience as a community organizer and an advocate who has begged media outlets like the Globe and others for years to do just this level of study, this level of scrutiny, because we all know that domestic violence is certainly a problem on the BPD. I've been talking about that for the past 20 years. But to think that somehow Dennis White is the poster child or the greatest sinner in that regard, or somehow to be made an example of, that strikes me as disingenuous when we have a wealth of information with everybody else that just this level of scrutiny, I've never seen it before. Was this same level of scrutiny brought in when Gross came in? Or certainly would beg the question when Evans or Davis or, let's do the 40 others.
Well, my own quick response is that people always experience extra scrutiny when they are in the leadership position. But since it's the Globe that's been doing this, massive amount of investigative work on problems inside the BD, Andrew, Ryan, do you want to just respond briefly to Jamal?
Sure. I mean, one thing first, so the info that we had to begin with, as was pointed out, for somebody who's been on the force for 3 decades, that's a long time. Like, just because they have a couple of internal affairs complaints, that doesn't necessarily in itself mean anything. These are obviously officers who have a lot of contact with the public. There needs to, you need to dig deeper and understand exactly what's behind those, which is what we were doing. Now, on the second point, certainly when somebody gets appointed to the top post, they get more scrutiny. And that's something, that we have done in the past. What we were particularly struck by was just the process in this particular case, that when we look at previous commissioners in general, there were searches, there were, named finalists, there were interviews, or, like in the case of the previous 2, there was at least a little bit of an interim period. There was some time with an acting commissioner. And, just the speed of the shift struck us. And so that obviously, we wanted to find out more, just to understand, everything that we could about this new person that we didn't know a ton about, and who didn't seem all that well known beyond the force.
Can we talk a little bit about the pace of the replacement of William Gross, who, at least to me, as someone who doesn't follow the BPD closely, seemed to step down kind of out of the blue? I'm wondering, since both of you, in your own distinct ways, pay very close attention to the BPD, what would the reason have been for Mayor Walsh to put Dennis White in the commissioner's role almost instantly after this resignation that a lot of people on the outside didn't see coming? Why did Mayor Walsh move so fast?
I can't and wouldn't even attempt to answer what's in his head.
Andrew, any reason? One thing I thought of, for example, was the mayor, in all likelihood, is going to be going to Washington, D.C. soon. There's a wide open mayoral race. Maybe this is a way to get a guy who he's liked working with into a role that man has aspired to before he goes out the door. Very simple explanation.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that we're trying to figure out and understand, and I don't have a great answer.
Okay.
It could be that. Obviously we've seen a lot of appointments in recent days to different boards and commissions. Which is pretty common in government when, there's a change of executives that people, put people in place that are, so their kind of influence and legacy outlast them. But yeah, we are trying to figure it out as well. And it could have been, as Commissioner Gross has said, that, he's been on the job for a long, long time. And, he wanted to work under Mayor Walsh and then was ready to retire. Right. So, but yeah, we're certainly trying to find out more.
Jamal, as someone who found Dennis White to be a partner when it comes to coming up with ideas for police reform and implementing those ideas, are you worried that the limbo state his appointment is now in could end up setting back the reform cause in Boston, or at least maybe keeping it from going forward the way you would like in the future?
I believe those that are happy that Dennis White is no longer in that seat, are the same people who are against moving towards any kind of reform or substantive change on the BPD. They're the people who like things as they are. They want the status quo, the good old boys network. And so, yes, I think that this situation, I don't want to say that it really jeopardized anything that's already been set in stone or in motion, but it certainly emboldens those who don't want to see change. And this is certainly a small, I think they probably see it as a small victory for themselves. We got one. Because, the ouster of Dennis White is not, it's just not a victory for the city. It's not a victory for the BPD. And if we're going to do anything, once again, the Globe or anybody else, if this is now a new concern for the Globe, because it hasn't been for quite some time, but if this is now a new concern for the Globe, I am absolutely 100% behind it. And I hope that they do it, but they just have to broaden the scope. It seems to me that right now, one guy has gotten hit. And we know that is not, Dennis White is not the crux of what's wrong with the BPD. In fact, he's a good portion of what's actually right about it.
To
go
be
ahead,
fair,
Andrew,
yeah. To be fair, over the last 6 months, we've written about a lot of different officers. So this has not just been a focus on a single person. And we've done a lot of digging.
Did you hear what you said? You said 6 months.
What's that? Well, I'm just saying, just for me personally, correct.
Yeah,
no, I got it. I've read it all, but you said 6 months. Right. I've lived in this city and I've been an activist since I've been 17. And what I'm saying is that over the decades, the Globe has been very much eager to jump on the stories that increase their profile, but they've also shied away from some of the stories that are a little tougher that show some of the underbelly there. So that all I'm saying is I'm for fair journalism across the board.
Well, it seems the good news is, as a Globe reader, there has been a whole lot of skeptical coverage of the BPD and a culture that allows a whole range of personnel who do bad things to just kind of skate on those. So I assume we're going to see more of that moving forward.
Names and cases to show you the disparate treatment, because I have a list.
We unfortunately don't have time, but I'll look for you on Twitter so that we can, because again, I've been very impressed by what they've been doing in terms of surfacing really troubling behavior on the part of a bunch of people who aren't named Dennis White. We got to leave it there. Andrew Ryan and Jamarhl Crawford, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I look to partner with you in the future.